Hi guys, we are at the Indie Bookstore Festival, one of the premier festivals which celebrates independent bookstores. I am a huge fan of indie bookstores. In India, I travel around, all across the country, and I'm just whenever I'm going book signings, I make sure that I go and promote the indie bookstores. I share it on my social media. So the indie bookstore, headed by Preeti Chaturvedi, has really given me a great and a grand opportunity to actually interview one of the brightest and the young talent of India. So these kids, I was just telling them how much how maturely they talk, and definitely, I'm just I feel younger right now, and I'm just very excited to have a brilliant conversation and a more very thought provoking conversation with you guys. So how do you guys feel, Samarth, Zuni?
Great.
Great, wonderful. So, just a brief about Samarth. Samarth Chitta is a 10-year-old podcaster and author from Bengaluru, India. One of the few child podcasters from India. He started his journey through a good news show on YouTube when he was 3 years old. Currently, he runs a kids-oriented podcast production house with his mom and has 2 shows available on all leading podcast platforms. That's pretty cool, Samarth. His first book, The Talking Walking Tree, was published in 2019, and his second book, Konichiwa Izumi Adventures in 2040, is ready to release. And I believe we are launching that book today, right?
Yes.
Samar? So great. So, he loves traveling, playing with his pet Yuki, building structures on Minecraft, and spending time with his grandparents. His favorite place is a swing on a jackfruit tree outside his house.
Yeah.
Jackfruit tree, wonderful. That's pretty interesting. So, but so Zuni Chopra is an Indian author, best known for her novel The House That Spoke. She has authored 2 books of poetry as well. Zuni is a daughter of filmmaker Vidhu Vinod Chopra and journalist Anupama Chopra. One of her poems titled The Mountain Range, that talked about the exam pressure on the students, was well received in the Indian media. She is set to major in creative writing at Stanford University in September 2019. Zuni was shortlisted for Young Author Awards 2018. My God. So I think this was in 2019, right, Zuni? So Stanford, how was it?
It's been great. It's still happening.
Still happening. My God.
Yeah.
So when did you join, though?
So I joined in 2019, and it's a 4-year program. Plus the pandemic has kind of caused me to I took
your trip to foreign has been halted, I guess.
Not really, actually. I spent my first year completely on campus before the pandemic started, and that was pretty awesome. And then I've done about a year from over Zoom, which is not as awesome, but it's still great. And I took sort of half a year off, and now I'll be going back next quarter in April.
Wonderful. So basically the thing is, guys, let's make it as conversational as possible, because I don't want to be like one of those oldies, and I feel like an oldie right now, talking to you and just like asking you random questions, and you need to be very, very methodical about it and very clinical about the fact that, oh, yes, I have to answer a particular question. Let's try to make it as conversational as possible. Let's try to have some fun, right? So if I ask a question, definitely if Samarth, you feel like speaking, if Zuni, you feel like, butting in and just like giving your point of view on that, I would love to hear that. So let's have a very conversational talk right now. So just to start off though, because since this is indie bookstore festival and everything, what about you guys? I mean, I'm sure that you guys must have traveled to bookstores. I think you guys must be voracious readers, because early reading leads to early writing. That's what I truly believe in. So, do you have any stories regarding indie bookstores? Do you have anything which you guys want to tell? Samarth, I think you can begin with, and then Zuni can follow.
So yeah, actually, my grandfather, he always for my birthday, or for his birthday, he buys me a lot of books. So I always pick the books, and I always read them. So actually these days now it's been on Amazon, but because they're in Hyderabad and I'm in Bangalore. Wow. But otherwise my grandparents, they would come to Bangalore, and then we'd go to the bookstores, and then we'd buy the books.
I see. And any particular store you are in Hyderabad? Any independent store that you have gone to?
So actually in Bangalore there are I go to Sapna Book House a lot, and also Higginbottom's.
Higginbotham's. I see one of the oldest stores in India.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So, what was you, Zoni?
Yeah, me too. I try to go to any books. Like my first thing is, can I go to a bookstore in whatever location that I'm in? And now it's more been, not just in India, but also in the US, because I've been living there for so long. And I think that there's no greater peace than walking into a bookstore and knowing that you have time to spend in there. And like, I think as a kid, my parents would have this rule, because I mean, I would just go crazy in bookstores. So they were like, listen, you can only buy as many books as you can carry home. If you can't carry it, then you can't bring it home. It's like, so as a child, I would go up to the register with like 20 books in my hand. They'd be like, no, you can't carry that. I'd be like, no, I'm doing it. And they'd be like, no, you have to put some back. But then the other side of that was that they would just find me, like, I would try to find like the most hidden away corner that I could and try to read the book and finish it before we had to leave. Because that way I was like, see, this is street smarts. You read the book here and then you get to buy more books and take them home. And they were like, we've been here for 2 hours. And I'd be like, I'm almost done. So, I definitely, bookstores are like my absolute favorite place in the world. And my friends can attest to this. Sometimes, we go to bookstores together when we're all together at university, and they're like, we have to keep a leash on you, because we come in and you're just like, oh, and then you just go and we can't find you after that. Like, you're just lost for hours. So definitely bookstores are my happy place, I think.
That's great. That's great. I also, in terms of, I think I've had very similar experiences. My mom and dad were like, whenever I used to go to bookstores, they used to be like, "Ek kitab leni hai, usse upar nahi." One book only, that's it. so that was a big challenge. So I have to choose the right book, the right thing.
Oh, yeah.
But I've had a very good experience with one of the independent stores in Delhi, actually, because I live in Delhi, NCR, and Midland store. I don't know if you guys have been there, if you had the opportunity to be there. It's one of the oldest stores in India, actually, just like Bhari Sons as well as Higginsbotham's. And the thing is, I used to go every Christmas there and buy books from there every Christmas. 25th December every time for the last, I don't know, 10 years, I guess, more than 10 years, yeah. And the thing was, now that person, the owner of the Mirza Sahab, had helped me to keep my first unpublished book. So because obviously as a writer, as a young writer, no one would publish me, because they wouldn't trust my instincts as a writer, or they wouldn't trust my story. But he was very kind enough, because I was this young kid who was growing up and was becoming a writer slowly and steadily. He had given me that opportunity to keep my books for free, without any stress, without anything. You know what, I'm going to showcase your talent to the world. So that was very sweet of him, very nice. So back to Samarth. What about thing is, first of all, I would love to see your book cover. Do you have your book at Konichiwa?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, that's great. Wonderful. Looks wonderful. So can you just tell me a little bit about, because this is also the launch of your book, can you just tell me a little bit about yourself as well, in terms of how this process of writing this book came to be? What happened? What was your journey like? What is this book about?
Okay, so firstly, my book, this Konnichiwa Zuni, actually, on my podcast, Curiosity, I just started it as a segment where every week I would have one different story. After that, that gradually became a book. And then, so me and my parents, we edited it, and yeah, it became a book. So now it's just all changed, because so some of the stories, the beginning ones, they are a bit, the end ones are a bit better than the beginning ones, I think, in my opinion, because I have gradually progressed while I was writing these books, the stories.
I see. And what is it about, though? Like, so it's about this anthology and everything, and different stories. I see.
Yes, so it's about Izumi, who lives in Tokyo, and then with his dog Akira, and then they go on different adventures. One is also outside Japan, but most of them are in Tokyo. They do different adventures together, ranging from fights with robots and actually fights with moles to a tea ceremony.
I see. That sounds great. That sounds great, guys. So where all is this available, Samarth, though, the book?
This is available on Amazon and Flipkart, and this is also available on my website www.kirasity.club.
Great, guys. So if you guys are watching, definitely go check out his book. Sounds very interesting. I'm sure Zuni and I will definitely buy it the second we keep the the laptop down and be done with it. But back to Zuni. The thing is, tell me your journey as a writer. What prompted you to become a writer and then go to study to Stanford to learn it more?
Well, I mean, I've kind of loved writing since I was a kid. That writing itself has come very naturally to me, I think. But I think I would sit, I don't know if you guys know, but those Playmobil figures with those for hours and make stories with those hours. And I'm still a little proud of the things that I built with those. I had my two biggest sets was a castle that took me 3 hours to build and a school that took me 5 hours to build. And the school had a working bell that you could ring and everything. It was awesome. But not the point of the question, I know, but I had to put that little brag in there, my 10-year-old self. And I think growing up, though, it became, I still kind of saw it as more a hobby or something that I enjoyed, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And I think when I published sort of my first novel when I was 15, that was kind of, up until that point, that was the hardest I'd ever worked at anything in my life. And I think you don't really know until you work really hard at something whether you want to do it. I think working at that novel gave me this perspective where I was like, oh my gosh, that was so difficult, but I love doing that. Like, I want to keep doing that, and I think that kind of was where it sort of clicked into place for me. And I knew from when I was young that I wanted to sort of go abroad to study creative writing. And the US is just one of the best places for that, because it's one of the earliest countries that saw creative writing as something that was worthy of its own form of instruction and its own professors and its own system of learning, not just, the way that most other subjects are taught. So I've been going to summer camps there since I was a kid, and I went to a summer camp at Stanford when I was 14, and I was like, I think this is kind of where it's at. I think this is kind of where I would want to be if I could. Yeah, and I think also, of course, it is kind of important to acknowledge the amount of privilege that my experience. I come from a family of writers, which has been hugely, helpful. I come from a family that's financially stable enough for me to pursue writing without worrying about, whether I'm financially successful, which is a huge, something that I'm grateful for, like, every day. So I think, it's kind of little bits of all of those things, I think, that have contributed to me being, where I am today, and I'm really grateful for it.
I love the fact that how self-aware you are. So Samarth, you have gone, and I think the one thing that is common between all three of us, I believe, that we write fantasy, right? Mm-hmm. I think I started writing fantasy. I was in love with Rick Riordan when I was growing up. I don't know what you guys read now, but what you guys read while you were also, when Samarth, I don't know about you, Zuni, what did you guys read like while now? Like, is it Diary of the people? A lot of kids read Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Is it like, I don't know.
I do read Diary of a Wimpy Kid too.
but any fantasy books you read, or you still read Rick Riordan, Magnus Chase?
I still kind of read Rick Riordan as well. I mean, Percy Jackson is like iconic.
Yeah, I also read Percy Jackson all the time.
I'm glad that the future generation is taking that forward, because it's
great. So when I was 14 years old, I read Percy Jackson. I was just fascinated with the entire story and the Greek mythology and everything. And I was just like, wow, I need to now take everything and put it and make an Indian spin to it. So I made an Indian Percy Jackson, and it's not even funny. It was so badly written. But the thing was, that's how my love for fantasy was getting expressed. So in terms of like Samarth, starting with you, what attracts you to fantasy that probably I don't know, something that you would want? What is so magical about it, I think, according to you?
So I think fantasy, actually, it is something that most kids still do read today, because my friends, most of their favorite genres is fantasy. And I think that is because a lot of the children are imagination. It's because of the power of our imagination. Because whenever you read it, I think you can actually connect to the stories. So also, I feel that fantasy is where I can, enjoy reading, because, well, yes, I do read some nonfiction, but That's just mostly because I have to, not because I want to, but I have to.
Who forces you?
Like for school, sometimes maybe for research, but mostly the fantasy, because I feel actually that is where I connect to. So also writing fantasy has been easier for me because as I can just think about something and I can actually write it down on, with pen and paper. So that's why I really do like fantasy.
Great. What about you, Zuni? What's so magical about fantasy according to you?
I think for me, this a Neil Gaiman quote that I love sums it up pretty well. I mean, he's my all-time favorite author, and he started my all-time favorite book of his, Coraline, which was what I read when I was young. That kind of inspired me to begin writing as well. He starts it with the quote that stories do not exist to tell us the dragons are real, but they're important because they tell us the dragons can be beaten. And I think that of what fantasy does for all of us. And I think that people often underestimate fantasy as just something that's always sort of, beautiful and sort of unicorns everywhere and, very sort of Alice in Wonderland style, which I love that book as well. Totally, that's one of my favorites. But I just think that the scope of fantasy and magical realism particularly, which is what I'm sort of more interested in, is far greater than people realize at, currently. And I think that we're sort of seeing now, not just in books, but in, books like with the whole era of book talk, like fantasy has come back in a big way as something that's, for adults, as something that's violent, as something that's, gritty, as something that explores worlds that are almost sort of, too like our own in a lot of, but it's also coming back, I think, in film and media with, shows like The Witcher and, Shadow and Bone and all of these things on Netflix. I think people are starting to realize the power of fantasy as not just something that's escapist, but something that can be very sort of consuming in a very real way.
That's interesting. I think somewhere it's between your guys' answers. I think mine is also quite similar. The reason why I love fantasy is because I think it changes worlds. It changes a person's mind. I think. I don't know how many people have read Lord of the Rings here. Or watched the movie. The movie. You have read, yeah. So I think the friendship between Sam and Frodo, I think it's personally, I feel something that's very moving and something which is very empowering kind of a thing. So I think I personally feel that fantasy is the most easy way for anyone to understand very complex things, the things that you want to talk about, I feel. So, yeah. So, I think I want to ask both of you also, the next question which I have is that since, I know that you guys started out quite young. Zuni, you started at the age of what? What age did you start writing? Got published, I guess. I think published would be the right word.
Published, 9. I think
9. Oh my God. So okay, 9. And Samarth, I think you're 10, if I'm not wrong.
Yes. So also my Facebook, I think, it was published when I was 7.
7. So there's a chat. So there's a battle going on between you both. Who's gonna do first? I'm 5. So no, just kidding. No. I was 12. I was little less advanced, I believe. But back to the thing is that as a young kid, right? There's a lot of challenges that one faces in the publishing, right? In terms of like how it worked with me was that none of the publishing people took me seriously when I started writing books. When I finished them book, no one would publish it because they would think, a kid has written it. It's not a big thing. So I even went to one of the big publishing houses, and I asked them, this is the book, and I went with my parents, of course, and they said, what, another kid had written this a very good book. Then we got to know that he copied Ruskin Bond. So we don't trust you. So this is the level of. Again, a lot of challenges that went through. That's why I told you I failed for 7 years and then I succeeded. So that was how it worked with me. So how challenges with you? Like what were the challenges that you guys faced? I'm sure every challenge is different. Every challenge is very important. So Samarth, starting with you, what do you personally think? What you went through?
So I think it's actually Writing was my challenge, not the publishing, because the publishing, it was actually pretty easy because my parents, they mostly handled that one. But writing, because especially I have school, so my first book, I had to do it while I was, right. I had physical school, but now I think my book, Konnichiwa Zuni, my new book, I think it's actually been easier for me to write because of the online classes, but still, I usually write on the weekends because after my classes, I need to finish my schoolwork and I need to finish, then I go out, and by the time I come back, I can't write. That's one of the challenges I faced, but also I think another challenge was the amount of drafts there were, because there was the one version, then there was a second version, and then I had to rewrite some things. I had to rewrite stories in some situations. I had to add more stories because the page counts. So I think those were my main challenges.
Wonderful, wonderful. Zuni, what about you?
I think for me, one of the main challenges was kind of like finding that balance that someone talked about, because, especially for my novel, I was in 9th grade, which I think is where stuff kind of starts to ramp up in terms of, pressure and academics and universities and all of that stuff. And I think I remember I wrote the bulk of the novel over summer vacation because, that was when I didn't have school. I didn't have that much homework. It was sort of the ideal time. But I was we were staying with our cousins, and it was really difficult for me because I was like, I would be in an upstairs room writing. I was like, this is my room, nobody come in, I'm gonna sit here and write. But it was really, really difficult because I would hear them. What my strategy was that I'll wake up early in the morning, I'll do like 4 hours of writing, and then everybody will wake up, and that way I won't miss anything. But of course, sometimes like you want to keep writing, or you're in the middle of an important scene and everyone wakes up just earlier than you predicted they would. And I would hear them like going past the door and being like, all right, like, let's go play Mario Kart. And they'd be like, oh, should we get Zuni? And they'd be like, no, she's working. And I'd be like, like over my laptop, and I would hear them like in the pool, because there was a pool that was right outside the window, and I could hear them like just sort of having a great time. And it was like it was heartbreaking for me because they live, my cousins live in Michigan, in a lake house, and we were like in the US for the summer, and I had made the decision. I was like, I'm gonna go see my cousins, but I will work, I will make sure, and and I did, which I'm very still to this day proud of. I don't know how I did it, but I'm that I think was a big challenge. And I guess sort of that's one of the best things I think about coming to university is that that balance, that crazy balancing act that I had done for like 4 or 5 years wasn't necessary anymore, because suddenly I was taking classes about writing. So my schoolwork and my writing was the same thing essentially. And that was sort of amazing. Like I was like, I have to write this poem for class. Like I don't have to do my homework and then write a poem afterwards. And that was sort of incredible. And I think maybe another challenge that I'm still sort of struggling with, it's just like the general like imposter syndrome and sort of dealing with just self-worth, because I think that it's hard, I think, when you know that you've come from a place of privilege, or when you're at a school with so many brilliant people, to be like, I'm good enough to be here, I'm good enough to write here, I'm just good enough as a writer, when there's so many other in the writer world, and I think that's especially difficult with art, because it's something that's so connected to who you are as a person, and it's something that's so different for everybody who writes, that I think this is, I'm sure, a challenge that every writer has to go through at some point, is being like, no, my writing is good, and I'm good enough, and I'm sort of worthy enough to put pen to paper, and my writing is worthy enough for me to say, hey world, like, listen to what I have to say.
Oh, interesting. I quite a you both have quite varied challenges, which are very fascinating, to be honest, and something which really, really interesting. For me, writing was never the challenge; was the publishing part. So this was the opposite. But that is great, though. That is great. Now it's the challenge, because now I'm handling a marketing agency on the side. So now it is like, how do I balance it out? I have to have a personal life. I have to have a company of my own, and then I have to do my writing. So. Headache. But Samarth, see, the thing is, just tell me a little bit about your podcast, though. Something.
Yes. So my podcast, Curiosity, is a weekly podcast, and
Where is it? Where is it? I mean, where can we hear this?
So it is available on major leading podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. So it's available there. But it is currently in season 6, and we are episode 68. So I had actually started this in the beginning, when, the first lockdown, the first wave of COVID in 2020, March. So because then it was like just something to do on the side, but now it has become something, that I do every week, and it has like almost integrated in my life somehow. So before it was just like a side project, but now it's actually become bigger.
So you have quite an amount of followers there, or is it still growing?
It is still growing.
I see. And so the question that I wanted to ask you is that podcast storytelling and writing a book, right? How similar or how different? What are your thoughts on it? Like,
so actually, it's quite different, I feel, because whenever it also depends on you as a reader.
Yeah.
But let's say when you actually read the book, then if it's like a book when there are no illustrations, then there are going to be more things that you can imagine. But also in a podcast, because there are no illustrations, you just listen to it. I think that also, enhances what you can think. It enhances your brain. But I think also when you're reading a book, you can understand it better, maybe. But maybe when you have a podcast, you need to actually read it with a lot of expression. A lot of, whenever it's sad, you need to read it in a sad voice, because then the reader will feel more connected to it, I think, the listener.
Yeah, well, that's true, Samarth. Being published, being out there, going here, talking to a very immature author like me, how's the entire feeling? I mean, published, you're published, your book is out, you're doing podcasts. I just want to know, sometimes what happens is that, so many adult things happen to us, we kind of lose our innocence. So, because we kind of start thinking, like, as you said, which is something which is very important, your podcast has become part of your lifestyle, right? So, and that is somewhere scary. It could be considered as scary as well, because right now your age is to have fun, right?
Yeah.
Just have fun with the podcast, right?
Yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah. So how, I mean, I'm sure it's fun for you now, but like, does it sometimes overwhelm you, or does it something it's like you're proud of it, you want to go forward with it? How does it work with you, Samarth?
So actually, firstly, for the question that you asked, being published and all, I'm actually very proud, and I'm also still quite nervous because I don't know what's gonna happen. But in my podcast, so actually I don't exactly feel too overwhelmed right now, because I personally think that I'm always more shy, or I always feel a bit more nervous if I am in front of a bigger audience. But in a podcast, I think I can communicate with people, but in that way, I don't exactly have to become nervous, because I communicate with them, but yet I'm not in front of a large audience. So I think that is actually one of the benefits of podcasts, YouTube, any of these platforms, Instagram, or any of the social media platforms.
I see. So the one thing I would like to tell you guys, both of you, I mean, as you are, venturing into the life of a writer, one thing I would say that make sure that there will be a lot of, because I was as nervous as you, Samarth. I was always nervous. Like, I used to feel, how will I speak in front of audience? And now look at me. I'm just, I don't even know. So believe me, I didn't even prepare any questions. I was like, I'm just going to have a chit chat, going to figure out how to, as we go along, we're just going to have a good chat with each other, So the thing is, remember one thing, that as a writer, as you grow up, definitely you're going to see a lot of speaking arrangements where you just need to improv, like, and then that kind of just becomes your habit. Like, now you don't care about the nervousness. Now it's more like, oh, I want to do it more. So definitely. So, Zuni, what about you? I mean, does it overwhelm you sometimes, or do you think that, and how does it feel to be a published author and out there?
I mean, it's kind of crazy. It's still it still freaks me out to think that like people are reading the things that I wrote, like people I don't know. Like every time someone, like, even if, and I think people think that I might be used to it at this point. No, like you never get used to it. Like sometimes, and I think I get a little overwhelmed sometimes. Like if somebody on Instagram is just like, "Oh, I read your book and I really liked it," I'm like, "You did? That is the sweetest thing anyone's ever said to me. Thank you." And they're like, "Oh, you're welcome." Like, so I still just get like really overwhelmed by it. But I totally get what you mean about, I think, having to improvise a lot, and I'm like really, really nervous a lot. I had a talk come out a little while back on Brute India, which was funny because they released it like 3 years after I gave it. But I was so young, and that was the first time I'd ever been on stage by myself. And what you don't see, because they've edited it very cleverly, is that I got complete stage fright and completely forgot what I had to say, and was standing on stage like dead blank for like 10 solid seconds, which doesn't sound like a long time, but it's a long time when you're standing on stage, everyone looking at you. And like, I think that was like, it was the worst day of my life. Like we got back and I just was with my face in the pillows, and my mom was like, "It wasn't that bad." And I was like, "It was horrible." So, I think you definitely kind of have to learn to think on your feet. Like I was at the Times Literature Festival, and Saru Brearley was speaking, the author of A Long Way Home. And I was supposed to just ask a couple of questions at like the end, but there was some kind of logistical issue, and they came to me and they were like, "Do you think you could moderate the whole session?" And now earlier I would have just been like, "No," but I was like, this is an amazing opportunity to like get so much time to speak to this author, and I kind of want to do it. And so I did, and I completely did what you were saying. I was just like half like improv, half like going off the questions that his answers to my questions, but it was a really incredible experience. So I think it's sort of, I think learning that comes with falling on your face a couple of times, but I think you do sort of, learn it in the end. So yeah, as far as getting published is concerned, it's whack. And I don't think it'll ever stop being crazy to me that my word is out there for people to read. Like that's crazy.
I like the statement though. Let's keep this our tagline. Publishing, being a published author is whack.
It is whack. I mean, think about that. Like people just, think that we take it for granted, but I don't think any of us do. I mean, think about the fact that right now, as we're all sitting here, somebody you don't know could be reading something that you wrote. It's crazy.
Oh God. So, Samarth, basically, what I'm noticing is that when I got to know a little bit about you, from Preeti, and I got to know a little bit about your book and everything, I learned that there's a lot of Japanese influence in it, right?
Yes.
So the thing is, are you a big anime manga fan? Do you read or do you watch a lot? Because my fiance also loves anime. She's crazy fan of it, right? So what about you? I mean, was it an influence, or was it something that you just probably watched a few shows and were like, okay, fine, I want to
go? So actually, firstly, it started when I was actually very, very young, when I was 3. So since
I was already young.
Yeah, but still younger than what I am.
Yeah.
Younger than currently, but like
okay.
really young. That's what I'm saying.
Really
young. So like when I was 3 years old, I was my grandmom's house. I watched Doraemon, which is Japanese kids cartoon, and also Shin-chan. And those are still one of my favorite cartoon
Doraemon. I see Doraemon behind you.
Yes, Doraemon. Yes, he's behind me. But so yeah, it is still one of my favorite cartoons to this day, because after that, after I grew a bit older, I started, trying to understand Japanese culture a bit more. And one of the main reasons I love Japan is because the just balance between the old, the history, but still, it is fastly one of the most developing countries in the world. So that's why I love Japan. And as I, grow up, I have like bunch of books about Japan. I always try to research whenever I can about it. So I am always, trying to do anything Japanese. And if there's any Japanese new thing, I want to read it, I want to watch, any new shows. So there was a new movie, when Doraemon movie, which just released on Netflix, Stand By Me Too, and then I watched it and then I cried because because there were some scenes and then it made me teary-eyed.
You plan to watch anime though eventually?
Yes. So like Pokemon, my friends suggest Naruto.
Yeah, Naruto. Naruto is a good start. Yeah. Jujutsu Kaisen. I don't know. There are so many of them. No,
Yeah.
There's like all the time.
Yeah, but also I feel that Japan is also like a very diverse and interesting and very different country from the rest of the world, because they also read how they read. That actually fascinates me a lot, because they read from left to right,
Yeah.
top to bottom, instead of how we read right to left. But so that's just so just interesting.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So, Zuni, when was the last book that you published? When
The
did
last
that
book that I
release?
published was The Island of the Day Before, and I think that was either 2018 or 2019.
Oh, so that's almost 2.5 years. Almost.
Yeah. I'm not sure.
So one can say that you are very busy in studying and just.
I guess there are a lot of things in the works right now. I'm working on a novel. I'm working on a lot of poetry. There's just like a lot happening in my life, but I think that I'm kind of now sort of, taking it a bit slow in terms of when I'm going to, publish things, because I'm at university. I'm learning so much. I'm growing so much as a writer. And, I think like those teenagers in my life were like such a roller coaster. Like everything was just like, oh my goodness, like it was all happening at once. And it was really exciting and I'm grateful for it. But I think now is kind of a chance for me to be like, all right, deep breath, like, let's see about this, and I definitely actually do hope to be publishing something soon, like perhaps, within a year, but I'm definitely kind of taking my time as far as it's concerned. I think that's one of the benefits of being slightly older, is you get to be like, all right, I'm old now, let me rest a minute.
That's great. That's great. So but Zuni, the one thing I would like to ask you though is that as a writer though, right? I mean, we keep growing. I mean, I'm sure you would not have been the same writer that you were when you were 9 years old.
No, I hope not.
Yeah. So obviously you have now studied in a prestigious university, and obviously you have written few books. What if you are given a time traveling machine, right? What would you like to tell the 9-year-old Zuni? That this is how one should write, or one should follow these rules, or whatever,
I guess I would just let her do what she's doing. I think she's having a good time. I think that's kind of all that she really needs to be doing right now at 9. I don't think she should be too concerned about the rules of writing. One of the reasons I think my novel is, so special to me is because I didn't really know the rules of writing yet. So I kind of broke them in a way that I'm looking back now, I'm like, I think that kind of worked. So I think that I would just tell her to sort of, trust in sort of her writing instincts. And I would tell her to kind of enjoy, I think as kids, we don't realize, what, and I would tell Samarth now, like 10 is such an awesome age, like just enjoy it, like there's a quote, I think it's from The Office, where a character says that I wish there was a way to know that you were in the good old days before you've left them. And, I think that that's kind of definitely, like sometimes, especially because I think the pandemic took so much of many of my college, experiences away, that sometimes I'm still like, oh my God, like I'm not even a teenager anymore. How did that happen? And it's whack, to use the word that has, I think, become the theme of the session. So I think that I really would just tell her to kind of enjoy it and to like make those memories, to do everything. To be reading Harry Potter, which she was doing like voraciously at that age, to be reading, I don't know, Percy Jackson, Alice in Wonderland, Coraline, all of the books that like shaped me as a writer, I think, from that young age. Speaking of which, a bit of a deviation, but I recently, the Harry Potter 20th anniversary reunion came out, and I bawled like an absolute baby. Like I was just crying the entire time, and we watched it together, all of us as a family, and my brother was holding my hand. And my mom's hand, and he was like, my mom cried too, but at least she cried like, he was like, at least she was crying like pretty tears, like you were like like you were like vibrating as you were holding my hand because you were sobbing so hard. And I was like, it's just that the idea that like I read that story as a child, and like it's been all of those years, like I'm, and that story still has so much power. And now I'm trying to do the same thing. I'm trying to, write something that, you know, will impact even just a few people, will change the way they look at the world. And there's such power in that kind of, in just the power of storytelling, and how, you know, how beautiful those memories become with time just really touched me. And I was just absolutely weeping. Like, I can't even, I cried a lot.
I absolutely get you. I absolutely get you. You know, it's
And also,
all right. Available in bookstores. All the bookstores though?
like bookstores mostly South India, but also a couple of bookstores I think North and like rest of India.
Great. So Samarth's book Kuruchava Izubi is available in all the bookstores, as well, especially South. And
Yeah, let's be real here. Come on.
The one who quoted that quote, I'm definitely sure that person didn't have a good cover.
Yeah, right. Totally.
So yeah, definitely. I think that was great chat with you guys, and lovely to hear such vibrant thoughts from you, vibrant kids. And see you soon, and hopefully catch up with you as soon as possible. Definitely, when I come to Bangalore, I'm sure I'll meet Samarth, and definitely
Yes.
to Bombay. Zuri, let's have a cup of coffee and let's discuss.
For sure. Thank you so much for asking us all these questions. You've been amazing.
Thank you so much.